Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer and creator, Michael, and today is the cosmic weather for December 2019. So before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to go over some of the great shows that we have coming up, and it's going to be a really fun month in December. Our first guest is Mystic Mitten Paranormal from Detroit, and they're going to be joining us again by video. And we're excited to hear they've had a lot of adventures recently, so we're going to get up to speed on some of the things that they've been doing, and that should be really cool. We're going to follow that up on our second show in December with our good friend Humberto Braga is going to be back, and he's putting together a group of an online networking site for psychics and mediums and healers and all kinds of different practitioners. And so that's going to be really cool. So we're going to talk about his project. And then the third show in December, our good friend David Ullman back on, who has just released his book, I think his first book actually, Ghost of Cielo Drive. And he's going to be talking about his experiences living in the haunted house on Cielo Drive. And we'll get into his book. And David's always fun, so we're really looking forward to that. Thanks for everybody for subscribing, and please do. We love seeing it grow, and we're getting closer to our first goal of 500 subscribers. And we've only been on this for a year now, so we're super excited about that, and we appreciate all the support. We have added a donation link to our subscription link, actually, to our website. So if you are enjoying the show and you would like to contribute a little bit to help us to continue to develop it and move it forward, please do so, and you'll find the information there. And it's for a subscriber would be $1.99 a month, and for a benefactor $4.99 a month. And of course, we want to keep the show ad-free, and if you can't afford it, listen anyway. We love having you guys. We're doing this as a passion project for you, but definitely helps us cover the cost a little bit if we can raise a little bit too. So please do that. And you can find out all the information on our website, and that's sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, sixthsensesociety.com. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it back to Krista, and we're going to find out what's going on in the heavens for the month of December. So take it away, Krista.
Thanks, Michael. I'm really looking forward to our December shows too. So we're broadcasting live today on a new moon in Sagittarius, and that is going to be one of our topics, the sign of Sagittarius. But I took a look at the month of December, and I thought I'd really focus on just a couple of things more in depth since it's a shorter show, and that's what I like to do. So the things that I found a little interesting was, first of all, that Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, is going to be moving into the sign of Capricorn on Monday, December 2nd at 10:20 a.m. As most of you know that are astrology lovers, it's been in its own sign of Sagittarius. So it's going to be quite a shift, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And also, I just wanted to mention, I'm not going to really talk much about this, but on Thursday, December 19th, Chiron goes direct at 1 degrees Aries, 28 minutes. So that will affect people that are in the early signs of Aries, or perhaps it squares you, early sign of Cancer, Capricorn and Libra. So those are just some examples of how that might really affect someone who's in their natal chart. And then, again, I probably won't have time to go through this, but I did want to mention that Christmas Day this year, we have a new moon solar eclipse on that day in 4 degrees, 7 minutes of Capricorn at 9:13 p.m. And I will talk maybe briefly about it, but largely I'm going to be talking today about the energy of Sagittarius and a little of Capricorn, because we'll be switching into Capricorn later in the month, and the planet Jupiter. So, Sagittarius, I decided to get about 3 different points of view, plus my own, about the sign of Sagittarius, the people that I like to read. And I recently have been reading the wonderful book by Stephen Forrest, Inner Sky, which I highly recommend for anyone because it's so well written. It's a really well-written, fun astrology book, and he has a really nice, succinct way of putting things, so you can sit down and really actually enjoy it. So what I always liked about Stephen is that he has these different archetypes he associates with each of the signs. And for him, the archetypes that he talks about are, for Sagittarius, are the gypsy, the student, and the philosopher. So he says they actually have a lot in common. Many of you know that Sagittarius is a fire sign. It's a male, it's a yang sign, so it's masculine, and it's a mutable sign. And of course, it's often associated with the centaur or the archer. Those are the 2 figures associated with it. But Stephen Forrest says why these 3 archetypes, the gypsy, the student, and the philosopher, have things in common. He says, quote, in his book, in each one, mind projects itself outward towards a new horizon. So we're going to talk about sort of, as we move along, sort of the more esoteric view of Sagittarius, even though this one has a little bit of it in it. It's a little bit more of what you would consider straightforward Western views of the astrology. Going into Demeter George and Doug Block's book, Astrology for Yourself, what they do with each of the signs is they have like what they call a skillful application and an unskillful application. So it's similar to like positive, negative, or this is the shadow of it. And some of the key words for Sagittarius are wise, understanding, optimistic, jovial, adventurous, athletic, animal lovers, and some of the unskillful applications, pompous, zealous, blind faith, indolent, tactless. So, the thing about the energies that change in the month, let's say I just wanted to work with the energies that are available, similar to if it's a storm or if it's a sunny day, you can tap in without really being a Sagittarius or knowing where a Sagittarius is. There are some that believe you just tap in to the available energy. Again, in my mind, it's important that you do this consciously, and it's more effective. And sure, there can be unconscious effects of things, but one of the misnomers, I think, of astrology is that the outer world makes you do things. I think sometimes, depending on your chart, your natal chart, there can be triggers that are created by the forces of transits. But at the same time, you are the one in charge of the trigger. You are the one reacting to it. So I still feel like sometimes people give too much power away to the cosmos. And granted, there are some huge forces sometimes, like tsunamis, but I think they're not as common as people think as far as affecting the masses, maybe individuals. So finally, there's also, one of the books I like is called Symbols for Women, A Feminist Guide to the Zodiac, written by Sheila Ferrant. Actually, there's one other person I'm going to talk about. She basically looks at the astrology signs and goes through them from a different point of view. She goes into the mythology and has sometimes different archetypes associated with it. So what I found interesting in her version of Sagittarius, she talks about, of course, the centaur, which is one of the, symbols of Sagittarius. And she said that originally the centaur was both the feminine and masculine. And she said the meaning was the feminine mind or female rider uniting with directing and channeling the masculine stallion. So most of us really see the centaur as masculine now, and that has to do with the Greeks, evidently. So that was an interesting idea, the idea of the feminine sort of really trying to be in charge of that forceful, fiery energy that is important for Sagittarius. She also mentions, as does Demeter George, that it's the first, she calls it social principles, Ferrant, and these are the first of 3 social principles. Next is Capricorn, then Aquarius. And these principles express the social forms that work in our societies. Whereas Demeter George calls it transpersonal, and they're actually the rest of the signs for the year. So you move out of the interpersonal into the transpersonal, which at some point I'll go a little more in depth, but you can kind of get a sense of it being sort of bigger than just yourself. And that is one of the more esoteric views of Sagittarius, is that we have, based on the glyph, and also when you look at things more from that point of view, there's a great book called Forces of the Zodiac, and Dr. Leichman and Karl Japaksky, they talk about each of the signs and how they can be energies that you use during the month on a more esoteric level. And they have a keynote for each of them. And so for Sagittarius, the keynote is finding the higher way. So the concept that they talk about, and also I think Isabel Hickey talks about this somewhere, that the idea that Sagittarius can be, sort of the higher soul or the higher mind. Many people know that the Sagittarius energy is often very zealous and into justice and fairness, and of course because of it's a sign associated with philosophy, sort of embracing different ideals and visions. So it's a great time, according to me. Also, I agree with this, and also according to these two men, Dr. Leichman and Japatsky. They say, quote, Sagittarius is a time for giving pragmatic focus to our highest aspirations and ideals. But this means considering each major area of our self-expression, contemplating the ways we can blend in more of the new directions of spirit, and then formulating specific goals which will serve this purpose. In this way, we launch our arrow. I love that idea. We're launching our arrow this month. So how are you going to launch your goals, your ideals in any area of your life? And are you going to be doing this from the higher point of view of the self, or are you doing it from your lower self? And I personally have nothing against the lower self. In fact, hopefully we can integrate all of the upper and the lower selves. But when I live from that self alone, which wants to be, I guess, all of my own ego drives and desires met, whether they're healthy or not, I'm not sure it will bring me the best happiness in the long run. So the idea is to take some of our goals and that we really want as individuals and maybe apply them into something that has meaning or reflects our philosophy. A really simple example would be, let's say I do love animals and I really feel badly that they're mistreated, so I can go and volunteer at a dog shelter, or I could be an activist to bring more attention to, for instance, in the whales, where they do those sonar testings, and that definitely hurts the whales, so I can go and try and fight against that. One of the tendencies, though, with the Sagittarius energy is to become a bit of a zealous person or zealot, and to kind of overdo it and to think that you have, I think, the answer for everybody. So I feel like there can be a fanaticism, there can be an impatience with the lack of progress with the Sagittarius. There can be that view that, oh, I know what's best for you. So notice if you do that in any way. I know I do that internally sometimes in metaphysics. I can admit, I'll say, oh, that person, really doesn't know what they're talking about, or this is the higher view. Instead of just, letting people have their own evolution, nevertheless sticking to what you know to be true at this point in your life and pursuing your own ideals and principles in spite of other people's that may be contradictory to yours. So in a sense, it's actually better now than the new year to begin to form your dreams and goals and ideals for the coming year. And then by the time you get into Capricorn, we'll talk a little bit about Capricorn, you can see a little bit of where that arrow is going. And so that idea of launching the arrow really, really appealed to me. And finally, the last thing I wanted to say more about Sagittarius is the keynote in Forces of the Zodiac is finding the higher way. And they also give a little mantra, which I really liked, which is, quote, with my soul as guide, I seek, I know, and then I act. So you seek, then you know, and then you act. So I think that's important. And what's interesting, one of the contradictions of this time of year is that there's so many parties and celebrations, and yet there is this natural urge at least in the Northern Hemisphere, because the days are shortening, to want to go within. So find time to do that as well as go to the parties. And I don't think it's possible to avoid all of the parties, or maybe have smaller gatherings in a sense, but make sure that you touch base with yourself now, and you're actually going to be ready for the new year before it even comes in. So that's a little bit about the Sagittarius energy that I wanted to talk about. And then I wanted to maybe jump into the idea of Pluto changing. Pluto. I'm always thinking of Pluto. It's on my mind. Jupiter, which is a great planet. I want to talk a little bit about it moving into Capricorn, where it's considered to be in its fall. And so that sounds initially sort of dreadful and, oh no. But you think about the evolution of Sagittarius into Capricorn. And so we've had that Sagittarian energy for, I think over a year with Jupiter. And let's first say what Jupiter is again. So Steve Forrest says its function is, quote, the maintenance of faith, the development of vitality and confidence. And its dysfunction, he says, is overextension, over-optimism, pomposity, and the denial of negative realities. I actually don't completely agree with the dysfunction. I have a strong Jupiter in Sagittarius in my midheaven. And I can say that I'm not sure over-optimism is the right word. I think overextension is absolutely true. And making mistakes through naivety, being naive about things, yes. But I don't agree with Jupiter not looking at negative realities, because it also is the planet associated with wisdom. So I suppose if I'm a person that never has any reflection, a person that doesn't have a philosophy to live by or ethics, perhaps that would be true. But I feel that Jupiter is one of my strongest planets to help me really deal with reality as I've gotten older, because I have thought about things and tried to understand them and lived by certain philosophy or principles. But the overextension is absolutely true. And maybe some of the over-optimism, but it is part of what Jupiter is. It's almost like saying it's bad because it's optimistic. And I'm like, how can optimism really be bad? Not really. I don't see it myself that way. So I disagree with that. One thing I found out, though, reading his book, was Jupiter, the planet, actually almost became a sun. And if it had happened, we would not be here as a planet, most likely. We would have had a solar system with 2 suns. So that was fascinating. Demeter George and Doug Bloch, they say as a key phrase for Jupiter that it's my search for meaning, truth, and ethical values, which I really love that one. That one's excellent. So we're going to be now in, I believe it was early December when it switches into Capricorn. And in a way, I would say, going back to the idea of the Sagittarius arrow, you can see what your aspirations and ideals that you've been working on this past year or so, where they're going to land. And then you can start to evaluate it. Perhaps it's the kind of thing that once they land, because it's sort of beginning to form, what can be a little challenging is making changes and having to improve things right away, because you've already set things in motion. So perhaps that's one of what Jupiter and Capricorn can do. But it seems like it can kind of steady things. Capricorn, the hardworking, the practical, the pragmatic, the earthy Capricorn can help to stabilize some of these dreams and aspirations and goals that we've been working on over the year. Isabel Hickey, in her book, Cosmic Science, she does have a little pessimistic view of Jupiter and Capricorn. She says that, it can be sort of like, I guess, restrictive. But she does say about Jupiter, she says it can represent the superconscious self and the self that was meant to be in charge with us, of us, because it's connected to the divine. So I could see perhaps there can be a little bit of a struggle with the earthy Capricorn and the superconscious self trying to come to earth, trying to be here and face things and deal with the reality of things. So that might be part of it as well. So that's a little bit about Jupiter and Capricorn, and we'll talk probably throughout the year as it moves forward. There's going to be a pretty interesting thing going on in January that almost every astrologer has been talking about for at least a year, some 2 years, and I'll talk about it next month. And then before I sort of finish up with some of the other astrological things going on, I did want to mention a little bit about Capricorn, which we will get into more in full next month. Stephen Forrest said some really nice things about it. And one of the things he said about the sea goat, which I really liked, quote, he said, the sea goat must select a public role that expresses his own personal values, interests, and whims. And he says that Capricorn's resources are basically, in a nutshell, he says it's Capricorn's iron will. And the shadow of Capricorn is loneliness, which I could see happening because there's an element of needing to rely on yourself inwardly in order to make your mark on the world with the Capricorn. So Capricorn gets sort of a bad rap with being sort of overly materialistic or cold or it's just not true. You know, I live with, my husband has 5 planets in Capricorn. I can vouch for Capricorn. And I've always, there are definitely some stigmas to all the signs that you have to kind of break through. But I really like that idea of Capricorn choosing the public role based on the inner self, and that will make the Capricorn person feel more successful. And that may not be a worldly success they're aiming for. There may be something else that's of value to Capricorn that they're trying to accomplish. So I like that. So I wanted to mention at least a little bit about what the moons are going to be like for you guys that like to practice magic. We have the first quarter moon, December 3rd. It's going to be in Pisces, 11 degrees, 49 minutes at 10:58 p.m. Our full moon is on Wednesday, the 11th, at 19 degrees, 52 minutes of Gemini at 9:12 p.m. And Wednesday, the 18th, we have our last quarter, 26 minutes, 26 degrees of Virgo, 58 minutes at 8:57 p.m. And as I mentioned earlier, we have Christmas on, which is the 25th, of course, is a new moon solar eclipse. It is going to be in 4 degrees Capricorn at 7 minutes, 9:13 p.m. These are all, of course, Pacific Standard Time. So stay tuned for that. I think the only thing I'm going to say about the solar eclipse is my sense of it, talking to a couple astrologers, it's just like a stronger new moon. Though I think I remember one of the astrologers saying you can kind of look ahead. I think it's about the next 6 months. You could plant an idea and then see how it sort of comes to fruition during that period of time. But please, everybody, do not listen to the sensationalist people about every little thing is going to change your life and there's a big shift of consciousness, because you'll feel really depressed when it doesn't happen. And it's a misuse of the energies because, again, the inner shifts happen within you. There's nothing that's going to make you shift if you are not ready to have a shift. What the outer forces do is they assist you. They help you by giving you opportunities through crisis, through good luck. They give you, but you have to be prepared for these. So if I have no preparation, I'll just go through these things having felt nothing or having really accomplished nothing. And even if a crisis changes me, if I don't do something with that change, I'll just go back to my old ways, which I'm sure you've all seen that happen with people. Look at people that keep relapsing with drugs, same idea. So to me, there's a misunderstanding of how the cosmos works with us. And unfortunately, I think that's just to get your attention to come to their site. It sounds so sensational if they say the portals are opening. Like, I don't know. It drives me nuts because it's almost every other week there's some portal opening. So watch that and think for yourself with the astrology. Now, I also wanted to mention, this is something that's more practical, but for years, I've been using Jim Maynard's Astrologer's Date Book. And he's an astrologer that's been doing what he's been doing, putting these date books out. They're great. They're very detailed. It's been my favorite, but he is retiring. And so I went to the quicksilverproductions.com. That's where they put out the actual calendars. And this was their statement about it. Quote, after 46 years, Jim is retiring. We are not publishing celestial calendars for 2020. There will be no printed version, PDFs, or apps. No celestial influences or pocket astrologer 2020. No celestial guides or astrologer's date books for 2020. And I thought it was great they spelled it out. And they must have gotten a lot of people asking. So they're hoping to find someone else in 2021 to pick it up, but they had no recommendations. I personally am starting to look for something else to use. I've really relied on Jim Maynard's for the show a lot of times, as well as astro.com. I use that. It's a great site as well. But I wanted to put out a thank you to Jim Maynard for all the years that he's been putting this out. It's really helped me. It's really helped the astrology community, and I wish him a happy retirement. I hope it's a good one. So that's too bad. But like I said, hopefully they'll find somebody else, and there may be something out there. I think Llewellyn has a calendar too. I'll have to check it out. So that's pretty much most of what I wanted to talk about today. I would say this is also just a good time to, kind of work with your own energy. I think it's a good time for a little bit of healing work now, personally, before we get into the new year. And again, one could say, based on the Jupiter changing signs from Sagittarius to Capricorn, the fact that today's a new moon in Sagittarius and that we are experiencing the Sagittarius energy from November 22nd to December 21st, this is a good time to really look at your ideals, your aspirations, how you live your life, your principles that you live, and to really see if they're working for you honestly. And if they're not, this is a good time to reset them. You can take a look at the past year and see how the ideals and dreams you've been focused on. If you haven't been focused on anything consciously, it's not too late to start something now. But this is a good time for this kind of reflection before the craziness of the holiday season comes to a head, which will start pretty soon as we head into Thanksgiving. I did also want to mention that we have other holidays, of course, and we have the solstice coming up on December 21st. So I wanted to put that out. And there's also Kwanzaa, I believe, is on the December 26th, and we have Hanukkah. So there's it's definitely a holiday season coming in, and I know it can be exciting and also exhausting for people. So take care of yourself for sure. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention about Capricorn, I did think I didn't mention a couple other things about Capricorn, was that in Demeter George's book, and she says that, again, the skillful application is that they're organized and responsible and disciplined, and unskillful is they're controlling, unemotional, and opportunistic. So think about this month as being, you're preparing yourself even to go into the month of Capricorn, where you can organize and be more grounded. And certainly there's going to be a lot of travel, but the travel with Sagittarius is both inner and outward. So I hope that you have safe journeys wherever you're going, whether you're starting to head out for Thanksgiving or you want to, have some plans for the December season too, since we're airing this on November 22nd. So I think that's pretty much what I'm going to wrap up with today. I hope you all have a wonderful December, and I will be looking forward to seeing you again for the January cosmic weather, which will be very interesting. So enjoy your month and stay cosmic.